have no problem people supporting the people that they believe in. If you believe in Mr. Clinton, and it's worth sacrificing your Second Amendment rights for a few kernels that he flips out there like the Pied Piper, you should vote for him. But I'm going to tell you what, you better watch what you're doing because he's taking away your rights. And once those Second Amendment rights goes, the rest of the Constitution you can throw out the window. Our president stood up in front of the people in this nation, stood up in front of the nation, and he put his right hand, he took an oath, he put his right hand on a bottle of Viagra and said, that was a Freudian slip. He took an oath, and in the oath he said, I will defend, protect, preserve, and uphold the Constitution of the United States. Now, there's a man there taking this oath, but the first thing he wants to do is throw the Second Amendment out the window. Is that a president that you can trust? Now, how do we beat people like this here? It's really very simple. We try to make it very complex how to turn around and protect our Second Amendment rights. It's very simple. First thing, I'm going to back up here again, hold on. We have over 1 million gun owners, or 1 million hunters in this state. We have hundreds of thousands of gun owners in this state. We can control any election in this state and this country. All we have to do is stay on the same track. The first thing I suggest that you do is turn around. You must register to vote. You must turn around, have your family and your friends register to vote. And you must vote for the people that protect our constitutional rights. It is simple and clear as that. The second thing you turn around and do is you turn around and you join the National Rifle Association. Without the National Rifle Association, we would be in deep trouble. Now, you don't have to agree with everything the National Rifle Association does, but if we didn't have it, we'd have a real problem. The next thing to do is turn around and join an organization like Grassroots, like Michigan Big Game Hunters Association, and turn around and get a hold of some of these legislators that you believe in. Call them up and ask them if they need any volunteers. And there is a legislator in this country that will not turn around and take volunteers. They need you, they need their money, they need your money, and they need your help. And also, turn that little radio dial on and listen to some of these people that will educate you, tell you what the real world is about. Turn on Mark Scott's show. Listen to him. Turn on and listen to Rush Limbaugh. Turn on and listen to Ted Nugent. Now, you don't have to agree, and I don't agree with everything they say, but they will open up your mind. They will make you think. They will get your head out of the sand. And they will turn around and tell you things that you will not read in your local papers, which is so full of BS and one-sided, it's unreal. That's pretty much what I've got to say about the Second Amendment. The other thing Mike had brought up about was this reward system here. I started a reward system here a few years ago, and like Mike said, we turn around, we put a man in jail. He's an animal rights activist. It's the first time, we didn't put him in jail, we put him in prison. It's the first time in the United States that an animal rights activist went to prison, and this organization did that. There's a man named Charles Murray that was murdered up in Iosco County about 4 years ago, bow hunting. Somebody went up and shot him with a shotgun, with buckshot, not birdshot, so he was murdered. They turned around, went up in a tree, and they robbed him, and they got in his car, and they moved his car, and they robbed his car. We have a $20,000 reward out for that individual, or for whoever murdered that person. Right now, we have turned around. There are 2 hunters that have been missing, and they've been murdered. David Teal and Brian Ogen from Troy and from St. Clair Shores. We have people that have put up $100,000 to find out who murdered these 2 people. I have here in my pocket right now, I'm going to talk to Mark Scott about this here in a few minutes. I have a letter from a man that wrote to me. He's in prison. He said that he has all the information that I need to put these people in jail. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Don McClure is our next winner, and Don is a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and commercial airline captain from Traverse City. He's one of our most active and faithful members. He drives 10 hours round trip sometimes to attend our events. And he and I have tag teamed in debate against some of his local law enforcement officials. He also runs the Grassroots video series. Some of you might have seen those on our display table. We got a 6-video series. And Don runs that Grassroots video series on his local cable access station. But Don is also a Purple Heart veteran of World War II. He was a gunner on a P-17 and was wounded and taken prisoner by the Nazis. He was a POW in Stalag 17 for over 13 months. I want you all to think about that for just a minute. Because as freedom-loving people, we talk about the restriction and the denial of our rights, but I don't think there's anybody in this room who's ever had their rights denied as totally as being taken prisoner by Nazis. Not long ago, Don found out that right there in his hometown, there were those who would try to deny him one of his cherished freedoms, a freedom that he more than paid his dues for, his right to keep and bear arms. He was arbitrarily denied under the color of authority an inalienable right by a tyrannical system of Gestapo-like officials who sit in judgment of law-abiding citizens. It's called the local county gun board. But they made a big mistake because he has no intention of ever being denied freedom again. He's fought these tyrants tooth and nail. He recently won his first lawsuit against his county gun board, and now he's getting ready to sue them again for violating his constitutional rights under Michigan's Article 1, Section 6. Don really knows the meaning of the saying, the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Ladies and gentlemen, a man with brass cojones, Don McClure.
Thank you very much. I have to tell you that when Mike told me about this some weeks ago, that I was totally shocked. And the reason I was shocked was because in bringing my lawsuit, I thought I was doing what these responsible citizens should do, and that is call our government to a task and responsibility. Those guys are not our masters, and we are not their slaves. And I am very pleased that the legal action we have so far, there are no more closed gun board meetings in Grand Traverse County. Not only that, we take our public access television cameras in there and tape it and put it on the air, and a damn thing they can do about it. But I do want to make this very important point, that none of this would have happened if it had not been for my friend and attorney, David Biganowski. Please stand up, David. This man, a former Marine, came to me and said, I can help you with this. And he has. Thank you very much.
All right, already. The final award tonight is the Brass Cojones Lifetime Achievement Award. We recently lost a patriot, a warrior, and a very special friend. So I asked another warrior, patriot, and friend, and the winner of the first Brass Cojones Award, to make this special presentation. Mark Scott is on the air every weekday from 3 to 7 on WXYT Radio, 1270 AM. If you don't listen to him, you don't know, and you don't know that you don't know. You know him by many names. He's the intellectual rapier of the Republic. He's the master of the universe. America's counterinsurgency to government genocide, the god of the machine. Ladies and gentlemen, a man with brass cojones, Mark Scott.
People will ask you, what's happened to America? What has happened to America? You know what the answer is? Nothing, as long as we have brass roots. Some brave people, some unlikely people to be honored, are being honored tonight. I say unlikely because they're like you and me. They put their trousers on the same way we do, one leg at a time. Maybe they put them on two legs at a time, but that was a number of years ago for me. This is a very special award, the Brass Cojones Award. And for those of you who received it tonight, as the years go on, you'll see that it is even more special than what you imagined. I came in contact with Jim Petrangelo a number of years ago through my broadcast, through martial arts, through his writing, through his thoughts, through his very keen intellect. And as a result of that, I found a friend, it really was a friend. I found a friend that was what you think of as a friend, a person that you can rely on, a person who doesn't bug you, isn't trying to demand your time, respects your time, but is always there, lets you know he's there, and is very helpful. And Jim Petrangelo was always helpful to me and helpful to the broadcast. He passed along an article that was written by Charlie Reese, who is an editorial writer for the Orlando Sentinel. And this was a couple of years ago. It was an article that impressed me because it had to do with guns and gun control and our Second Amendment right, and the right to be able to defend yourself, a right that was argued many centuries ago by Cicero. Now, it doesn't make any difference whether you have a government in Canada or a government in France or one in Russia or Chechnya or Pekanbaru or Baru-Katinji or the United States of America. No government has the right to deny you the right to be able to protect yourself. That is a fundamental, basic right that comes out of your right to life, to be able to live as a man and woman. And Jim Petrangelo understood that, maybe more clearly than most people, because it's a fundamental principle. It's a basic. In other words, it is the most fundamental principle because your right to life, there is nothing more fundamental than that. Absolutely nothing is more meaningful, more fundamental than your right to life. And then that corollary right, which means you have the right to defend your life and those of your loved ones and friends and people, innocent people around you. So Charlie Reese, I had this sent to me by Jim Petrangelo, and Charlie Reese he's a great writer, and he's talking about the easiest way to resolve in your own mind the gun control debate. He gives you a little test. And I want to read this to you because it had such meaning to Jim Petrangelo and had consequently such meaning to me. First of all, do you believe you have a right to live? Now, you folks know this. Most of you, maybe you haven't heard this particular piece, but you know all these things. But I think it's a good time to focus on it, especially tonight with the Brass Cojones Awards. Do you believe your spouse and children have a right to live? If someone is threatening to kill you and your family, do you think that you have a right to defend yourself? Now that's the objective yes or no part of the quiz. Here's the one final essay question. How will you defend yourself and your family if you're confronted by an armed intruder or intruders? Now you could call 911. Unless, as often happens these days, the intruders have taken the trouble to cut your telephone wires before they kick your door down. But if you did get the call off, you still have a problem. The intruders are there in your house, and the police aren't. Sad fact is, because of logistics, police cannot protect you. That's because of logistics, not because they don't want to. In more than 99% of the cases, by the time the police even get called, and certainly by the time they arrive, the crime has already been committed. And the hard truth is that when you're confronted by a criminal, well, you're in the same situation today that you would have been if you lived alone on an isolated ranch on the American frontier. You see, there's nobody at the dance but you and the criminal. I mean, you have to fight. You win, you live. You lose, you die. Simple as that. Remember this, when you say that, and the statists say to you, that's simplistic, just ask them, what did you leave out? No alternative unless you want to depend on your begging and some begging for some thug's mercy. But in serious encounters, by the time the cavalry gets there, well, there'll be dead and wounded lying around. Many of you already know that and have experienced that. The question that you have to answer is, do you want to be among the dead or do you want to be among the living? Now, that's not a real brainer, is it? And you may suppose that you're a glib talker, and when some crack-crazed thug sticks a gun in your face, you can reason with him. Well, that's a far-fetched supposition, my friend. And I'd bet on the thug. Any honest street cop will tell you that the predators roaming today, as a matter of fact, all you need to do is to talk with Larry Nevers or Walter Budson, and they will tell you that the predators roaming today are far more dangerous than even mob hitmen in the past. And the reason for that is because the hitmen they'd never kill without a reason. Today's thugs kill on a whim for no rational reason at all. And many of them will kill everyone there, including babies and children. These were troubling things to Jim Petrangelo. I mean, they're troubling things to all of us. But he really felt, he did what the president says he does. He really felt their pain. Now, these neo-totalitarians, or the new totalitarians, sometimes known as the gun control crowd, will repeat the big lie that a gun kept for self-protection is more likely to injure you and your family than the criminal. Now, there's a flawed study, that is a flawed study, by the way, that released that information, that gave you that fact or factoid. More importantly, it is a factoid because it's flawed. Based on that lie, which was discredited a number of years ago. And if you take a gun to a gunfight, well, you may not win. But if you don't, you're surely going to lose. Credible studies by respective scholars with no bias show what common sense tells you, and that is that thousands of Americans every day save themselves from criminal harm by using a firearm, most of the time without even having to shoot it. And you know, to me, there's no more outrageous insult or bigger example of stupidity than a government that has such a gross failure at preventing criminal armed attacks on the population that it would take the position, actually take the position that the answer is to disarm the future victims. Charlie Reese continues to write how he takes it as a given that any politician who proposes to deny honest people the means to defend their lives and the lives of their children is either too evil or they're just too stupid to tolerate in public office. And you know, when you hear some politician talk about gun control, Charlie Reese has one thought. This is a commentator, by the way. This is an editorial writer that you really have to give praise to. Because he says, when I hear some politician talk gun control, I think, you, expletive deleted, you're endangering my children. Well, you have a right to own a firearm. Don't let anyone take that right away from you. Use it. Now, Jim Petrangelo liked what Charlie Reese had to say. And for those of you, by the way, who are interested, he writes for the Orlando Sentinel. Jim Petrangelo was a man who stood very tall. He was not just a good friend. And he's not going to be missed because he was a good friend necessarily, but because of many other things. He was a guy who stood shoulder to shoulder with a lot of us in these battles to keep our liberty and our freedom. I can remember when we were marching up in Ann Arbor around the courthouse, and the federal marshals were out there intimidating us, and they were taking photos and film. We were marching because we want to keep our liberties. We want to keep our freedoms. Jim Petrangelo, fiercely individualistic. Fiercely individualistic. That's the first description that I got about Jim Petrangelo from Mike Feldman. First thought of the mind. He had a great sense of humor. He was one of those rare breed of men, actually a spiritual warrior, really. But he was a rare breed of man who understood the concept of rights and of man and the sovereignty issue. And when I say the concept of rights, he understood the concept of rights. First of all, he understood what rights were. You know, a lot of us talk about rights, but we don't really understand rights. A right is something that you have without permission. You don't need society to give you that. You don't need a government to give you that. You don't need the clergy to give you that. You have it as soon as you're born. So Jim understood that, understood the basics, and what it means to be free. A free man. Remember when we had that ABC, America with a K? And people had an opportunity to see what happens to you in a series, ABC ran it, when you no longer have freedom, when it is very slowly taken away from you. Well, we're at that point today in this country where our freedoms are very slowly being taken away from us. Now, sometimes we can stop it, as we did Executive Order 13083. And the president is on notice. Folks, this arrogant man who believes he is above the law, can you believe that talk radio forced him to take a second look and a third thought and then back off? Now, he'll take a run at it again, but he did back off. This is the guy that the news media loves to tell you is the leader of the free world. What a man. Well, I say that tongue in cheek. But you contrast him with Jim Petrangelo, who worked tirelessly to sustain the idea and the notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The idea that you can pursue your own goals. Now, that was something that sparked Jim Petrangelo. And that's what made him individualistic. And he's going to be remembered for that, for all of these things. He'll also be remembered as a very kind and a very thoughtful person who loved his family, loved his friends, and exemplified a great love and passion for his country and the fundamental principles on which this nation was based. James Petrangelo. There's a little poem here that Jim liked, written by Robert Heinlein, and Mike Hoban saw fit to print it in this literature that we have on the Brass Cojones Awards. And this does describe Jim. It describes the inner thought process, what went on in his mind. Mighty little force is needed to control a man whose mind has been hoodwinked. Contrariwise, no amount of force can control a free man, a man whose mind is free. No, not the rack, not fission bombs, not anything. You can't conquer a free man. The most you can do is kill him. And Laurel? Is this the award? This is the recognition of his lifelong dedication, and I'm glad that it's finally delivered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to thank all of you for coming tonight, and I wanted to especially thank Grassroots for allowing us to all be here tonight. Thank you very much. And now we're going to enjoy the band as per Jim's request.
Thank you, Mark. And Laurel, where'd you go? Thank you for all the nights that you spent with your husband, Jim, up at my campaign headquarters, stuffing things into envelopes, making things work. I think in the last 3 years, you and Jim probably put in 6 years worth of time at some freedom cause or another. And that brings me to my last thing here for tonight. Before we get to the band, I've got to get personal here. Jim Petrangelo was my friend. I think Jim really believed in 3 things more than anything else. He believed in hard work. He believed in loyalty, passionately believed in loyalty to his friends, to his family, to his country. And he had a rare grasp, a belief and a feeling, a desire, a passionate desire for the ideals of liberty like I very rarely see in any individual. Jim Petrangelo was my friend, a patriot, and a fighter, and he believed in what he fought for every minute he fought. When I first got politically active, Jim Petrangelo had beat me by what, 30 years? So when I came along, and my campaign manager, Barb, who couldn't be here tonight because her son's getting married tomorrow, by the way. That's why she's not here. She's at a rehearsal dinner, for those of you who are wondering. And when Barb tried to get me into a speaking event at Freedom Hill that Jim was organizing back in '92, Jim said, yeah, well, who are you and what have you done lately? Some would say he was a little cranky, too, which he was, let's be honest. Which was a good point. Who were we and what have we done lately? And Barb didn't have a ready answer for that. But if you know Barb, she might be the only person on earth as persistent as Jim Petrangelo was. So she kept on him. And he kept saying no. And this went on for weeks. And Jim Petrangelo won. And I didn't speak there. But he did give us a booth. Well, something happened at that dinner that changed Jim Petrangelo's mind and resulted in our friendship ensuing. It seems that my campaign, because we knew we were going to be out in the weather, brought along an awning. Seemed like the rational thing to do, seeing as how it's Michigan. And it rained. So we had our awning, and we were kind of watching the rain pour down off the eaves of the awning, and about 100 feet away from us is the Republican booth. They had put in an order for good weather, apparently, because they didn't bring their own. Well, they got real wet. So they went to Jim Petrangelo and said, put us in the pavilion. And they got the same response that John Kuhn did when he said, put me up there to speak. He said, what are you, nuts? You had an opportunity to buy your way to the pavilion. You had an opportunity to pay the fee to be in the pavilion, and you didn't do it. You know? You paid for what you got. And you were stupid. You should have brought it on. Look at the libertarians. They weren't stupid. They got an awning. Well, they left in a huff. And left about 200 pounds of frozen hot dogs and grill equipment. If I'm stepping on any toes here, folks, forgive me. Some of you might have been there. But anyway, my campaign manager, never missing a trick, said, hey, what you going to do with all them hot dogs, Jim? So She made a quick deal. We retrieved the hot dogs, ran volunteers back to my campaign headquarters and our volunteers' houses, and got all them hot dogs in the freezer so they wouldn't go bad. Got some volunteers with pickup trucks and collected up all the barbecue gear, got it all stored away nice and safe, and got it all back to the right people when the time came. Next year, I spoke at that rally. And Jim Petrangelo decided that he saw something that matched what he felt. Jim Petrangelo didn't just think about freedom. He didn't just know it up here. He felt it right here with every breath he took. And he was a blood brother. He felt it. To compare him with Bill Clinton. A man like Bill Clinton never has a chance to become anything like my friend. He never will be. 2 years ago, Jim Petrangelo asked me to meet him for lunch. And he said, "John, I don't think I'm going to live much longer." And he said, "If I die, I want you, I would like it if you would see that my wife Laurel is taken care of. I would like you to try to do what you can to build the XL phone business that I've started so that Laurel can be taken care of." Jim Petrangelo did not believe in government assistance. Jim Petrangelo believed in hard work. He believed in loyalty to family and friends, and he believed in that ideal of freedom. And he went to his friend and asked him. This is not a small thing, and we both knew it. But Jim Petrangelo had been working at that point for years, putting his own private financial life on hold to work for freedom. And I told him I would do that. Now, you folks know how often I come to you and others in this movement come to you and ask you to reach in your pocket, come up with a little bit more to help out a cause. I want to ask you tonight, friend to friend like Jim asked me, not to dip into your pocket and come up with anything extra that you haven't, that you don't already. But Jim Petrangelo started an XL phone business. I've been an XL customer now for a couple of years, and I can tell you it saves me money. It don't cost anything. How many of you here have a telephone? How many of you here pay a phone bill? How many of you here see any of that money go to people who you know supported the cause of liberty to the extent that Jim Petrangelo and his wife Laurel did? There's one of these on each table. If you're not an XL customer now, what I ask you to do is pick it up, fill it out. It's the only paperwork I'm asking you for tonight. Either Laurel or I or Stan Broyles will get with you. We'll set it up. You're already paying a phone bill anyway. This is something you can do to help a man who didn't believe in government assistance, didn't believe in anything but hard work, his family, his friends, and freedom. And then, when you're done tonight, at some point when you leave, just drop it off at Laurel's table. Laurel, where are you at? Can you stand up so they know where to find you? She's right over here by the door, folks. If you'll drop this off at her table on your way out, I will appreciate your assistance in fulfilling a promise that I made a friend when he knew he was dying. Now, I believe we have a band here. Am I correct? Are they here? They are here. All right, this is a band that Jim Petrangelo liked. This was his favorite band. And now we're going to have fun. Am I getting this right? The Tartar Sauce Traditional Jazz Band? That's it? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jim Petrangelo's favorite jazz band, the Tartar Sauce Traditional Jazz Band. Thanks for coming tonight. Let's have fun.